Do you mind if I acknowledge the fact that me and you kind of like bonded during our cancellation that took place at approximately the same time?
Yeah,
and we actually went to an AA meeting together, which has kind of come back to bite me in the ass because at least one person who saw me at the AA meeting told my girl's mom that they thought I was an alcoholic because I was at this meeting, which it was kind of like a weird thing to be there as a person who doesn't really have a problem with alcohol.
The meeting was in an Armenian neighborhood.
Exactly.
And Lena is from an Armenian family.
For sure, I saw people that know her, like that I recognized from like seeing them hang out with like other people in her family.
Yeah.
That was a pretty trippy experience because I'd never been to that before. A lot of dudes drinking black coffee at like 8 p.m. just going through shit.
And every meeting is different. Like I remember at that one, they had like a lot of like interruption culture.
Yeah.
So someone would like tell some, dark story because that's what it's about. And they'd be like, yeah.
No, okay. People are up there telling stories and a lot of them, they're not necessarily like natural public speakers. So they're not yelling to the audience, and meanwhile everybody who's sitting there is making small talk amongst each other, and I'm trying to hear the guys who are talking and I can't hear shit because everybody's just chit-chatting in the crowd. That was a very strange dynamic.
I remember I hit you up right as I think it was they wrote that article about Richard Spencer. It was right after you had Richard Spencer
Media
on.
matters.
That's when I hit you up. It's like, because I know what it's like to have a big publication slam you, and I know that like it can. That's why I hit you, is I know how it can make you feel like the whole world wants to see you die, and I just knew that like when Media Matters weaponized that like anti-Nazi apparatus against you, and I knew that you maybe didn't know too much about Richard Spencer. Like I don't think you've been following like the rise of white nationalism like that.
A little bit. People got on my case and said like, oh, you weren't, you didn't do enough to acknowledge how horrible Charlottesville was.
Well, this is a hip hop platform.
Yeah.
It's not like you spend all this time analyzing what happened at Charlottesville.
Right.
So I kind of saw him on here and I was like, oh shit. And then I saw them slam you. And so I hit you up and I was like, dude, like, are you good? And I remember you were like, dude, I'm doing hella bad. So I was like, me too. Come with me to this
That
interview.
really wasn't the thing that me up. If anything, the Media Matters article was almost like a joke to me at that point because nobody in my world knows what that is or gives a about that really. Right. So that didn't really like do that much damage to me, but it was nice to like actually get to connect with you at that time. And I still have people in my life who are kind of like annoyed by the fact that me and you have a cool friendship because the whole like kind of semi throwing me and academics under the bus in the O-Block video doesn't sit right with certain people, which we've had the whole conversation about that. I don't hold a grudge about that at all.
Just to clarify that in particular, like I think that early on in my career I was like just taking a lot of risks and kind of burning bridges in a way that ultimately accrued a lot of bad faith, which I felt like kind of made people less sympathetic in burning bridges with me when it was my time under the chopping block, if that makes sense. Like I still like, I'm not going back on what I said about being critical of like gang platforms or whatever, but I do think that the record companies bear a lot of responsibility in the whole in the whole situation itself. And I feel like that's the one angle that I feel like I just didn't mention. Like, I don't think that podcasting creates murderous gang situations. I'm sure it doesn't help, but I mean, the actual issues that cause that are much more systemic and encouraged by these billion-dollar record corporations that promote artists like 21 Savage, who make murder anthems for kids to listen to in middle school. Right. So it's like, I mean, sure, and I don't know, I just feel like in general, when you have really high public favor, people encourage you to throw others under the bus, if that makes sense. Yeah. And at that time, I had no haters. And so I'm making a video about drill music, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I know people are always shitting on Adam and academics for having gang members on the platform. Like, this sounds like a good way for me to posture myself as like a more righteous creator than somebody else. And over time, especially when I was so fresh to the game, no one ever had turned on me. And when that started to happen for various reasons, I was like, damn, like a lot of the people that I kind of would throw under the bus a little bit are now taking this opportunity to shit on me. Right. And that's just kind of like karmic retribution for the posturing I was doing.
Yeah, because like your shit was like, you had just reached this absolute like apex where you were starting to like break into being taken very, very seriously by sort of mainstream journalistic institutions, et cetera. And they were starting to, kind of do their thing and try to poke at you because of the Alex Jones inclusion and the video and everything like that. But then, you get to see it hardcore. And it was like, I actually really appreciate you being so open about it on that Lex Friedman interview, which I just watched the other day, because, you were talking about like the pain of somebody that you've been cool with since high school unfollowing you and just knowing, like oh, this person doesn't fuck with me, or waving at somebody on the street and realizing like, oh, they don't fuck with me. And that's like, you were honest about that to an extent that I don't think I have been with my audience, where it's like that process is like very painful of having people decide that they can't associate with you anymore. But I've always just kind of tried to like breeze past it and act like I didn't give a You were like much more forthcoming in that interview than I'd seen many people be.
I really don't have anything to hide from is the thing, you know, and so it's like, it's just frustrating. And if I was to sit down with someone and explain the situation like I have with you, they'd be like, oh shit, really? But you know, the fact that a lot of people weren't even willing to have that with me and were just like, oh, I read this thing about you, you know, and I'm like, okay, do you want to ask me about it?
Right.
No. It's just the social pressure is stronger than the desire to hear someone out.
Yeah. And it's tricky because as soon as you start explaining yourself, it starts to kind of read to normal people as like, oh, he's trying too hard to explain himself. If you have to explain yourself like this, then you must have done something wrong.
I'm going to do it en masse at some point.
Really?
Yeah. But I'm going to wait until I'm so far away from that controversy that I can do it in a mature way where I'm not like, there's no salt in my in my veins about it. Like there's no emotion, like not no emotion, but I don't want to use that situation as a way to get publicity and like further. My comeback's going fantastic. You know what I mean? If anything, I'm doing better now than I was 4 years ago, 3 years ago. You know, I might not be taken seriously by the mainstream press, but they wouldn't have taken me seriously ever. I'm an outsider.
They're really just building you up to break you down at some point, regardless. It's just a question of how good of a case they can put together to go against you.
So, you know, I'm gonna do that. But my whole thing is like, I'd like to see things rebuild themselves and just let that kind of be the icing on the cake at the very end of the road.
Definitely. So, yeah, I mean, I remember kind of having that conversation with you at that time, and you know, it's kind of weird to like explain to somebody who's brand new to being canceled, quote unquote, like what is happening and what this is going to be like. Do you still feel like, you know, you put together this whole movie, which like a lot of people on the left should probably be fascinated by and interested by, and they should want to write articles about it. And I'm assuming you're not getting anywhere near the same level of attention in that regard as you did on the This Place Sucks documentary, or what's that been
interestingly
like?
enough, I'm actually getting the same level of viewership. I'm getting the same level of streams. We've generated like, I think, $250,000 in streaming revenue in the first 2 weeks. So it's the same level of streaming, if not more. The difference is that people aren't mainstream publications. They go to cover it, and the editor-in-chief flags it for various reasons.
Right.
So, like, for example, I had People Magazine did a whole write-up. Everybody on board is like, this is cool. We're down. Even the editor of People's like, sure, let's do it. Editor-in-chief at Time Warner, whoever owns them, or Disney Corporation, is like, I don't want to touch this. They nix it. You know,
I've definitely had this, yeah.
Until I can present a lot of information, that's going to continue to happen. Until they have something to point to. A lot of it is just people not having access to the information that I do and being like, you know what, we don't want to take this risk. It's not necessarily a moral obligation. It's a liability thing for them.
Right.
You know, so if you can give them something to point to, eventually that will start to subside.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, like obviously Dear Kelly is independently produced. It would have been independently produced as well without a controversy. That was always the plan. It's just the only thing that is harder now is securing mainstream press write-ups. That's it.
Which is really kind of overrated in a lot of ways, right?
It is, but it's validating on like a core level.
Yeah.
As far as making a Wikipedia page for a movie or something like that. Like those are the things that a controversy in your past make way harder.